Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Adult Bible Studies. I'm your host, Wayne Williams, and it's truly my privilege to be with you today. Today, especially, it's my privilege to be with you. I was having some trouble with my computer today and having a hard time getting this YouTube video to uh, load. But by the grace of God, today turned out to be one of those special days when my grandkids and my children and my grandkids come together to visit. We try to do it about once a month, every 6 weeks or so. Everybody brings a covered dish and we eat together and just kind of have a time to visit and catch up with each other. And we enjoy that time together. And today, especially, was a wonderful time for that because I was having this computer problem. And one of my grandsons is an information technology expert. And he came in and I asked him, I said, if you have a minute, would you help me with a, if you have a minute, would you help me with a problem I'm having with the computer? I try not to do that every time he comes, but this time I had really wrestled with this and I couldn't get it straightened out. And he said, well, sure. He came back and it even took him a couple of hours to figure out what the problem was. I'm not sure we ever completely figured out what the problem was, but at least we fixed it so that I could join you today in this video. And so, praise be to God. Thank you for grandchildren who know that all this new technology and stuff. And even though us old timers try our best to keep up with it, sometimes we need help. And needing help is not a bad thing. Having family and friends and others who can help and will help. What a blessing. What a blessing. Well, today we're continuing in a series of lessons where we're talking about the blessings of being God's church, being a part of God's church. Uh, and we've been talking about different things that characterize the. Last week we looked at the topic of forgiveness, and certainly forgiveness is something that's a key element in the life of the church. We are to forgive as we have been forgiven, and Jesus brought that teaching to us as he used the parable of the rich man who had loaned money to one of his servants, a great deal of money, and then the servant, when it came time for the debt to be called, was not able to repay the debt, and so he had to come before the rich man and say, "I'm sorry, I can't pay this debt, and please forgive me." And he found forgiveness in the heart of the man who he owed the debt to. But then he turned right around and went out and imposed a great difficulty on another servant who had loaned him a much smaller amount and was not able to pay. And Jesus used this as an example about how forgiveness should instill in us, first of all, an awareness that we're not perfect. We don't always aren't always able to follow through with everything the way that we would like to. Sometimes we just mess up, and we need forgiveness. And we need to be able to come to God and say, Father, I look back on this now and I just can't believe this is a problem, but it is. And I'm asking you, if you will, to forgive me and enable me, Holy Spirit, to be the person that you'd have me to be and to be able to start again, to have your forgiveness so I can wipe the slate clean and start again. Well, forgiveness is an important thing. And forgiveness in that sense was forgiveness of sin, forgiveness of those spiritual sort of things. Today, Jesus he's talking about forgiveness and how we see our relationship with other people, how we forgive those who have need, how we forgive ourselves for having resources that we need to share with others, and how we see that because of our being given those resources, now we have the ability to reach out to others and to use those as just like any other talent that God gives to us, the talent to sing, the talent to preach, the talent to minister, the talent to heal, the talent to comfort, all those talents that God gives to us. Money can be a talent. Here in Matthew, the 6th chapter, this is part of the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus is speaking to us today, verses 19 through 24, where he says, "Stop collecting treasures for your own benefit on earth, where moth and rust doth eat them, and where thieves break in and steal them. Instead, collect treasures for yourselves where moth and rust doth not eat them, and where thieves don't break in and steal them. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. The eye is the lamp of the body. Therefore, if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light in you is darkness, how terrible that darkness will be. No one can serve two masters. Hate the one and love the other, or you will be loyal to the one and have contempt for the other. God and mammon, or God and wealth. This is a powerful lesson for us about how in the church we are to be understanding, empathetic, sensitive to the needs of one another. As a person who has extra resources, we need others to be sympathetic to the fact that we're trying to we need others to be sympathetic to the fact that we're trying to be good stewards of that. And first of all, not to take unnecessary advantage of us. One of the most frustrating things that I find in today's world is I'll try to give a little bit to these agencies that seem to be doing such good work. And then because I'm not a very wealthy person, I'm not able to give a large amount. I give what I can and I hope that they'll use it wisely. But then they turn right around and basically show me that they're not using it wisely because they just flood my week after week after week with all kinds of mailings. And before you know it, they have easily sent me the equivalent in mailings to the money that I gave to them. They don't honor my giving to them. And so this idea of having resources and sharing those resources and receiving resources from each other is two-sided. There's the giver and the receiver, and that needs to be put together. And Jesus says, think of things, think of money. In our world, everything computes to money. We did a lot of bartering and back and forth. I'll give you this basket of corn if you will give me some of those tomatoes that you have. I'll give you some of this pressed olive oil, and you give me a leg of lamb. All those kinds of things. Sometimes it wasn't money involved; it was things. But nonetheless, it's that idea of one person having a need or needing something they don't have, and you having that, and they're needing to obtain that from you. And doing that in a way that's sensitive and caring, it's one of the hallmarks of the church. Having that sense of not always asking what seems to be the proverbial question these days. You know the one I'm talking about. It's, what's in this for me? Oh, it makes my heart cold when I think of all the times I heard someone and basically you could tell from their response was, what's in this for me? Or why can't they do that for themselves? Why get involved in that? That's not at all a characteristic of the church that Jesus is talking about here. He's talking about when you have resources, use those wisely. And if you have more than you and your family and your direct responsibility, then you have a gift to share with other people, and sharing that gift in a way that's responsible. Sharing it with people who receive it in a way that's responsible. Sharing it in a way that bring God's blessings to bear on more than just you, on more than just them, but the whole church might be blessed with a sense of harmony and a sense of support and a sense of caring for one another. Jesus uses the example here of the eye. create in us a desire, or we're instantly drawn towards things or pushed away from things. I remember in college I took a marketing class, and oh my, in that marketing class it was very eye opening about all the ways that retailers and other people do to utilize your eye. I remember one thing that really, red is a color that your eye picks up quickly, and red is used so much in packaging and labeling and displaying things because simply that it grabs your eye and focuses your eye on that thing. Another thing is the way retailers have those things that are right in the aisle that you come in, you get a cart and you start in the store, and there's these aisles of things that you probably didn't even have any intentions of needing, but you walk by them and you think, oh, those cookies look good, or my wife would really like some flowers on the table, and that would be really pretty. Or here's a nice card, or here's this or that, things that we weren't really thinking about when we walked in there, but the impulse, the eye, so it creates in us the impulse, and can sometimes even seem to engender the need. We start saying, oh, I need that. And yet we hadn't needed it bad enough to be thinking about it when we came to the store. That kind of thing is what he's talking about. Keeping our eyes focused on the things that are the best things. Seeing the resources that we have as gifts and ways to serve God and ways to bring praise to God. Sharing with each other, not because I am so great and wonderful and fantastic, and I have, by my great virtue and because of my great abilities, I have all this extra wealth. I have, by my great virtue and because of my great abilities, I have all this extra wealth. No, it's because God has blessed me. He has enabled me to be a blessing to you as well. And learning how in the church to do that and to do it well. Sometimes people don't need money. Sometimes they need an encouraging word. Sometimes they need a hug around the neck. Someone to say, let me go with you, or let me show you how to do that. Let me help you with that. And those are all ways that we have to be stewards of resources and offer that gift of grace to each other, because God has graced our lives in so many ways. I love that passage from the Sermon on the Mount where Jesus talks about these things. And he reminds us it's impossible for us to serve two masters. When God and his will and his kingdom is first and foremost in our lives, everything else falls place unto that. And there aren't any problems connected with, should I this or should I that? We can put things in a proper perspective and a proper hierarchy. But without that, when our eyes draw us aside too much towards working towards that promotion or getting that raise or buying that new car or having a property or things that other people will look at and say, wow, aren't they special? That's when things go wrong. And we start serving those things rather than seeing him as the source of those things. What a powerful lesson that is there. Jesus talks about serving God first and foremost, letting our service to God and our relationship with God be second to none other in our lives. Well, in Acts, we go on and we follow this idea of the church and stewardship and thinking a little bit about the early church. Acts, especially chapter 2, here where our verses are found today, is about the church started. This is a turbulent period in history, somewhere around 50 to 70 AD, somewhere around the time when the Jews were really beginning to rebel against the Romans, and the Romans were really tightening down on them. And in 70 AD, the Romans got to the point where they just came in and dispersed the Jews and tore the temple to pieces, and all the Jewish people, and Christian people were really persecuted and put under a lot of pressure because of their uh, rebellions against the, the Roman government and the Roman people in the times in which they lived. And these church people, these Christian people, gathered together, and during this time of great turmoil, this time of great need, they hunkered down and they supported one another, and they saw that together God has given us each other. That's being the church in a powerful way. God has given us each other. He's given you to me and me to you. And it's not about I, me, my, mine. It's about us, ours. It's not about want. It's about needs and being sure that everyone has what they need. Listen to this passage in Acts chapter 2, 42 through 47. The believers devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, to the community, to their shared meals, and to their prayers. A sense of awe came over everyone. God performed many wonders and signs through the apostles. All the believers were united and shared everything. They would sell pieces of property and possessions and distribute the proceeds to every day. They met together in the temple and ate in their homes. They shared food with gladness and simplicity. They praised God and demonstrated God's goodness to everyone. And the Lord added daily to the community those who were being saved. Hard times, not just for the Christians, not just for the Jews, but hard times for everyone in this area, and at a time when the church really needed to pull together and be there for one another. And they were like that. They saw themselves as a community. They saw themselves as a family. They saw themselves as a part of God's kingdom, and that was first and foremost in their minds. They cared for one another. They shared with one another. It was a time that called for great sacrifice, and they made those sacrifices. And because they made those sacrifices and the way they shared with each other and the way they cared for one another to get through these times, others were influenced to think about God in a different way, to think about God's kingdom in a different way, to think about being a part of God's people in a different way. And people were coming into the church because they saw the example of the Christian people being a church for one another. These people were from Missouri. They didn't just say it, they did it. They were people that showed other people what love was about. They were people that showed other people what it was about to care for one another and to break down those status lines that existed and exist in the world. It was no longer about, aren't I special? It was about, God is special. And because of his grace, we have been empowered to do this. And those who could give were just as thankful for being able to give as those who received and needed it so desperately, because both gave God the praise and the glory for that. Other people saw that. Other people see that today in our world. Today we don't face the kind of economic and political and all that sort of, and just war kind of situations, abuse and physical kind of things, danger and that sort of thing, like the early church was seeing at this time. But we still care for one another, and we still show the church what it means to be God's people. As a pastor, most of the churches I've served have always had what they call a pastor's discretionary fund. And as a pastor, I was enabled to, as I encountered people in the church as well as in the community who had very special needs and who maybe the church through its resources could reach out to and help. I was enabled to do that in the church. It allowed me some confidentiality in the church. It allowed me some confidentiality. I didn't have to tell everyone exactly what was going on with all these people. I used the resources responsibly. There was accountability there, yes, but nonetheless, in the name of the church, in the name of God. Today we do the same thing, don't we? We have children's homes. We have local areas in the church we're attending right now. Many people of the church work at a community agency that passes out clothing and food for no cost to people. And they screen those people in the sense of sitting down with them and seeing what their needs are, really showing genuine concern, not just saying, "Oh, you need a shirt. Well, here's your shirt. Go on." You know, but sitting down and seeing what the problem is, helping them in not just physical ways, but spiritual ways and emotional ways, giving them support and caring and empathy. That's the church in action. Today we may do it a little bit differently than what they did here in Acts, but nonetheless, it's a vital part of being the church. Whether it be our own personal resources that we are sharing and seeing as a gift from God to share with other people, as we saw in Matthew, or whether it's in Acts, where we as a church are bound together in such a closeness and harmony that there is that caring, mutual caring and understanding that allows us to be one in our sense of reaching out and doing ministry. Praise be to God when His church can be the church and when we can represent Him both in our forgiveness and in our stewardship, in our love for one another, and most of all, in our focus upon Him and His kingdom today and into tomorrow. God bless you. What a wonderful and to understand God's people and our gifts to share with one another. I want to remind you that next week I'm going to be starting a different format for these Bible studies. I'm going to be doing some book studies rather than topical studies as we've been doing. I'm going to start studying 1 Peter. I'm going to be using some material from Lifeway. And if you would like to get that material and be able to look over the lesson for ahead of time, or even have the material so that after you listen to me present it, you can go back and read it and get from it that way. However, I would encourage you to do that. You don't have to do that. Take your Bible, read through 1 Peter. One of the best ways to study a book of the Bible is to first of all start off by just reading it from chapter 1, verse 1, all the way through to the end. Read it through quickly and hurriedly, but at the same time not stopping at every major point and commiserating a whole lot either, but and hurriedly, but at the same time not stopping at every major point and commiserating a whole lot either, but just trying to get the flow of who the book is written to, why the book is written, what it is the book says, and what kind of topics and what kinds of issues that book deals with. Do that with 1 Peter. Next week we'll start together, working together in developing a better understanding of the book of 1 Peter. God bless you. I hope to see you then. Bye-bye.